So we're in the mountains above Ioannina, a small town called Metsovo, and we came across this memorial to Greeks who died in 4041, presumably fighting the Italian invasion, which was badly botched by Mussolini. But the tragedy is in the large numbers of people. There are 4 plaques full of names, so it must have been a very bloody engagement. I don't know anything about the Battle of Metsovo, I must look it up. But clearly an important one in Greek history. And then next to it, where Elizabeth's standing, there's what I think is a Shafi tank, which would be late Second World War, American. So it would have probably seen service in 45, this type of tank. It's got Browning machine gun on the top and the coaxial next to the 75mm main gun. Quite a light tank, fast. I don't think I've ever seen a Shafi in the metal before, so quite an interesting find. So clearly this area has a military connection. I've got a further hull-mounted machine gun as well. So not a heavy tank, but more infantry support, I'd say. Right guys, we're in Meteora. We're halfway up a hill at the minute, about to visit a monastery. It's very steep. I hope it's worth it when we get to the top. We shall find out. Well, we climbed a hill and reached the top of the monastery. And we spotted this little box, about the size of a telephone box, which goes up on 6 wires right up to that overhanging wooden balcony at the top, and that's how everything goes in, food wise I assume, and possibly people as well. And further round there's an old wooden ladder that goes up into a window up there, which may have been the original personnel entrance with a longer ladder before this was built. But we're surrounded by amazing rock formations with line of shadow of a huge flat-faced cliff. I don't know how well this will show up, but down there is the van in the shade in the bottom left-hand corner. We're incredibly high now. Apologies for being out of breath, but it is very steep. Get fabulous views, unparalleled views, but you've got to work for it. I've got to keep my voice down because it's obviously not the place for home movies, but right, we're back outside on the balcony, because when I started filming in the church there was a big sign pointed out which said you're not allowed to use a camera or video camera inside the church. So anyway, we're now at the top of the lift we saw earlier, and as well as going up, when it reaches the top there's a mechanism to drag it in as well on small rails. So very clever. And then from the balcony, I don't know how well we'll see this, directly in front of us is another one perched on an outcrop. I think there's about 9. The lady at the campsite very kindly gave us a small hand-drawn map to show us the way round. I think there's about 9. We're not going to be doing all 9. It'd see me off, I think. Yeah, this is the monks' recreational area, where they will sit out in the evening. It has a bell for ringing people in from the gardens because they grow food on the hillside. And I suspect there's what looks like a wooden paddle thing here. Now in Ottoman times they weren't allowed to ring bells, and so instead they had large planks which they hit with the implements just like that to draw people in at prayer time. So I do wonder if that's a remnant from then, or a replica of a remnant from then. I've just found what I assume again is a replica of the wood. So that's the wood they would hit with the wooden implement to call people in at prayer time before bells were permitted, once the Greeks were independent and the Ottomans were gone. And we just found this tucked away in a corner, a little shrine, presumably to the founder of the monastery, where I Visited one in Montenegro years ago, which was like this, where the original monastery had been founded in a tiny slit in the cave, and then everything else was built around it. So this might have been the original place of worship. There's a small garden just at the bottom of the steepest part of the hill. A few vegetables, some courgettes, a few olive trees, possibly some vines, yeah. Tomatoes, yeah. Small amount of everything, really. Being tended by one of the monks as we speak. So, we've moved on to another monastery, and lo and behold, there's some classic cars parked up at the top. The Greek Marathon. Swiss cars. Well, Swiss registered cars, because I suspect this is an MG, and it is an MG. I did a road test of one of these many years ago for a magazine. Fabulous little cars, very popular with the Americans post-war, because they had a vintage feel. And the MGB's leaving now. Bye bye. And then further down, and probably more of my taste, is a lovely old Opel from the 60s. 1700 Opel. Lovely. I mean, lots of people probably think the records are quite boring because they're sort of family cars, but I love them. Very stylish car. Very reliable as well, the Opels. Fabulous. Been to Morocco in 2018. Oh, and the 2013 Silk Road Rally. My word. Istanbul, Shanghai in 2013. It's a very well travelled old record. And in lovely condition, really. Sills have been blacked, which probably shows have been replaced, but otherwise, lovely old car. Wonderful. And the first classics we've seen from, well, since I entered Albania. I didn't see any in Albania. A car supplied by Central Garage at Glarus. Can't say I know Glarus, but presumably it's in Switzerland. And I don't imagine that the person who put that badge on at some point in the mid to late 60s ever imagined that this car would end up doing all these exciting trips and still be knocking around, what, 50 years later, more. Right, we're in a second monastery we're visiting, and it's a nunnery, this one. It's far more welcoming, to be perfectly honest, far less austere, far more joyful place. There are far more flowers, just a happier, more open place than the first one. Draw whatever conclusion you will from that. I'm not going to put any thoughts in your mind. So, as we climb back up to the van from another monastery, part next to us, a lovely old XK. Part of the Swiss group. Just found a little Greek market filled with lots of fresh produce, halva, little sardines, a bit of octopus and squid. In the corner of the harbour, got this Greek camper van, an old Japanese-based one, Mitsubishi I think, complete with garden on its rear box, which is very attractive. Looks like that stays there for most of the time, to be honest. Right guys, we were in Uranopoli for a couple of nights by the sea, which is the last village before Mount Athos. But it's been incredibly hot. We've been unable to sleep, it's been so hot. So we decided to move on, and now we're in the up in the hills of the Halkidi region, a small town which is renowned for its old buildings, which are sort of in the Ottoman style, regional style for this area. Stone with overhanging balconies and things. Charming little town. It also has a interestingly decorated old church. The gates are locked, sadly. But it's not that old. It only dates to about the 1880s. But we can't get in anyway, so we'll have a wander, and then we're going to head back down towards Thessalonika, where we intend getting either a hotel room or an apartment or something with air conditioning, because it's hitting 90 degrees plus every day, and it's not much cooler at night. So the thought of a nice cool bedroom, pardon?
It's unbearable.
It's unbearable, yes. So that's the plan. I'll show you where we end up when we get there. Right, we've moved again. As you can see, we're now in a, I hope you can see, we're now in a bay with some very large container ships. And over to our right, tucked away in here, there's a very large cruise ship, because we're now in Thessalonica. We spent a couple of days at Uranopolis, which is the entry town to Mount Athos, which is very nice, but incredibly hot. So we'll come down to Thessalonica because A, we've got an air-conditioned room, and Elizabeth flies out from here tomorrow, and I will be heading over to the far coast of Greece on my own. So that's where we are, Thessalonica. It's a large, busy, bustling town. And smack bang in the middle of all these houses, just off the seashore, there are the remains of the palace of the Emperor Galerius, which is a substantial building. Lots of it still standing despite the earthquakes that have occurred subsequently. Mainly of brick, bit of stone. And then again, next to a busy road just up from the palace, we've got these wonderful Roman carvings in stone which have been stuck to a brick arch. So slightly cheaper construction than some of the earlier stuff, but impressive nonetheless. Looks like it displays the usual Roman victories over barbarians and their enslavement, which is the most common theme of these things. And then behind it, up there, some sort of Byzantine rotunda by the looks of it, so we're going to have a look at that as well. So, apologies for the flare, it's hard to get out of the sun. Just up from the palace is another late Roman, I imagine, rotunda, which was then repurposed into a mosque when the Ottomans took over, and has now been repurposed again into a church. And the old tower, which is up there, which again, banded steel over stone, so it's also been repaired, but that had been repurposed into a minaret. I can't get any closer because it's all locked up. Right, so a short distance up again, up the hill from the Roman stuff, is this Ottoman style house. And this is where Kemal Atatürk, the future creator of modern day Turkey, secular Turkey, was born. So there's something on the wall, so let's just see what it says. There we are. It says in French, it's here that was born Gazi Mustafa Kemal, the great renovator of the nation of Turkey and champion of the Balkan Union. This plaque was placed here on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of the Republic of Turkey, the 29th of October 1933. So the Kemal family must have been reasonably well off, because it's a nice house and big. And being Balkan, of course, I was in North Macedonia some years ago, a place called Bitola, and Ataturk did his military service, military training as an officer up in Bitola, North Macedonia, before returning to Turkey to help overthrow the rotten remains of the Ottoman Empire. And it's attached to the Turkish embassy, hence the very high security walls and all the cameras, because sometimes tensions can still be high between the two countries. So we managed to get inside through a security gate, and we're about to go inside a building. There's a Turkish flag flying because the property stands in the area owned by the consulate, so we're actually standing on Turkish soil inside Thessalonica. Let's have a look inside. It's quite dark inside. You get the shutters closed because it's air conditioned, but it's a good size. This is the kitchen, obviously. One of the formal rooms. So there's a basement, which is on the same footprint as the house above, obviously. And then there's an upstairs as well, which we're going to look at in a second. And then again, it's very dark, so I don't know if you'll see. It has an upstairs bathroom with a stone, just a large basin really in the corner. But at least it had indoor washing facilities. Oh, and some of his artefacts. He was a very keen smoker and probably contributed to his early demise, sadly. But there's a cigar holder and a cigarette holder, and a representation of the great man himself at rest. And some of his formal attire. He was an extremely snappy dresser. He was renowned for being a snappy dresser. And judging by the shoes, must have had very narrow feet. Anyway, he was well known in social circles at that time for his elegance. And in this bedroom, which faces the street that we came in on, or couldn't come in on, but the one you originally would have come in on, is the room in which he was born. And hidden away behind a wall is this ancient church, which dates back to, I think it was the 14th century, did you say?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow, obviously getting ready for some event, as there are children's balloons and things. But a wonderful old church just tucked away. I have to whisper, there's a lot of people in and around, but the walls again are completely covered in ancient paintings that look very, very old. Hard to put a date on, but very old. Incredible little church. And in the church ground, by the step, is this little chap eating a bit of carrot. Obviously a resident. Ruins, which you can't get to because they're gated off at the minute, are actually the entrance to what was the monastery to which the small church we've just been in was attached. And apparently the paintings we just looked at date back to the early 1400s, so 600 years old. And all good towns eventually throw up a treasure that isn't a historic building. And just spotted up this little side street a 2CV in a non-standard colour, but looks like it's still in use because they're taking the time to cover up the roof. Slightly dishevelled, but again all the best ones are. So there we go, not seen many classic cars this holiday at all, but good to find a 2CV sitting in a corner of Thessalonika. The amount of graffiti is incredible. It's just absolutely everywhere. There were even vans parked in a square we walked through. They've been covered in graffiti, presumably overnight while their owners were in their houses. And most of it is unattractive and unartistic. There's the occasional bit where you think, oh, that's quite good. But most of it is just scrawl. And it's everywhere.
There's some anarchist stuff around.
There's lots of anarchist stuff. There's quite a lot of political stuff around squats. Presumably with the Greek economic situation, squatting is the only viable option for lots of young people here. But yeah, the place is just full of graffiti everywhere. Another classic, slightly more modern, but still a classic, a Lada Niva 4x4. I had one of these in the 90s for a brief period of time with a Fiat Twin Cam 1600 in it. Great fun. I'd quite like to find another one, but I think they've all rotted away in the UK. And inside this little church are the mortal remains of St. Demetrius in this box, which dates back to about 900 AD when he was apparently killed by the Saracens. So away from the action, we're back into parts of the very old church, Byzantine brick, the Byzantine eagle and the icon stand. So the whole church is a jumble of probably early Byzantine right through to some very modern additions at the far end. And then again, hidden away amongst all the concrete blocks, which are pretty much all there is of modern day Thessalonica, we have the remains of the ancient forum, which is fairly large, but not a lot of it left. The sea is just through those trees there, only a couple hundred meters through those trees. So no doubt further excavation might reveal some more, but sadly I assume that when these tower blocks, concrete blocks, went up, that would have been the end of it. Right, I'm not sure what this bike is. It's clearly two-stroke, bantam, all that sort of stuff derived from it. It's marked up as Auto Union, which wasn't aware made motorbikes, but the whole bike's covered in them. So DKW of some sort originally, I'm sure. Reminiscent in style of the BMW R20s, 26. But yeah, unusual.